Ruth chapter 3, we're going to cover, Lord willing, verses 9 through 12. 9 through 12. So I'll read those for you. Ruth 3, verse 9. And he said, "Who art thou?" Now, I'll set the stage for you a little bit. Naomi is told, and I'll explain all of this in a little more detail, but Naomi has told Ruth to go and lay at the feet, basically, of Boaz, after he's had a hard day's work, and he's there basically sleeping in a field next to some of the harvest. And so she does that, and so this is where he picks it up, and he said, "Who art thou?" Because it says, verse 8, that he was afraid. And she answered, "I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid." And I'll explain that in a minute. "For thou art a near kinsman." And he said, "Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast shown more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether rich or poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a near kinsman, or a kinsman rather, nearer than I." And the Lord bless us as we study His Word. Bless our time together. Amen. A lot of interesting things here. There's some innuendo if you read it that way, but I will explain it. Defeat is real, but it's only temporary, if that's what you choose for it to be. Some people get defeated in their life. They get angry over it, they get bitter over it, and then that's their life from that moment on, especially if it seeps into bitterness about how things have gone. I know some people right now that have lived a bitter life for 30, 40, 50 years. What a horrible way to live, amen? That's not what we want. So defeat or failure, however you want to phrase that, is real enough, and all of us have experienced that, but just make sure it's temporary at best. Another way to put it is that when looking at the story of Ruth and Naomi, it's clear that hard times are very real. But they also are temporary, and very often are a matter of perspective. It doesn't take a PhD to understand that the environment we create determines how well we innovate and solve problems. Sometimes it's the environment that we put ourselves into. If you're in an environment that perpetuates those problems, if you have a problem with a particular habit or something, and you keep exposing yourself to that particular habit, it's probably going to be very difficult for you. That's why it's important when somebody makes a firm commitment to Jesus Christ that we welcome that person in so that they can have a change of lifestyle, and they're putting themselves in a position where what may have been a failure can now be turned around and they can find a solution. There's a type of maxim that goes, if you want to write well, speak well, and do well in general, stick with what you know. Stick with what you know. Of course, that's going to mean that you've learned something in the first place, right? That always takes time, but that is always time well spent, to learn something and then stick with what you know. When I go into an area for the purpose of speaking at a church or somewhere else, I try to find something about that area to share with people. It's amazing how little residents know about their own area. So it's easy to do. I'll pick up a local newspaper, or I'll talk to some different people if there's a historic site around, and I'll talk to them and find out a little bit about the area. And as it turns out, it's something that, again, most people didn't know, perhaps had even forgotten. And that takes a little time and effort, but it shows the people that I'm interested in who they are, and I'm interested in how they live, and the things that at least should be important to them. Ignorance and arrogance are a dangerous combination, aren't they? And they often lead to disaster. They always, ignorance and arrogance, well, separately, they don't lead to anything good. Put them together, they never lead to anything good. Ruth could have easily claimed ignorance about the customs of the land. She didn't do that. She wasn't a Jewish woman by birth. She was a Moabitess, right? The Bible tells us Boaz could have been arrogant, as he was obviously a man of wealth. He owned land. He had people working for him. Thankfully, neither of them chose to go down those paths. Both of them took the time necessary to learn something new, beneficial about themselves and about the other people around them. The more you learn, the more diversified your thinking becomes and the greater your ability to see problems differently. When we come together like this, it's not to confirm what you already know. That may take place as the Holy Spirit leads, but it's to get us to diversify a little bit, if you will, in what we do know so that we can see things differently. And you have to decide what it is you want. Real change takes place because of what you choose to do with what you know. So change takes place because of what you choose to do with what you already know. And some people say, well, I don't know a whole lot, and I don't know a lot about the Bible, so I really can't do that much. You probably know more than what you think you do, and so it depends on what you're choosing to do with what you already know. That means showing yourself to be a faithful steward of what God has given you. Some might say, again, I don't know that much, but I can guarantee you that what you know at this moment is at least enough to move you to the next step of personal development. If that's all you know, that's pretty good. You know enough to get you to the next step of personal development. It's knowing that the next step needs to be taken when we come to a crossroads. It's at that point that hesitancy and commitment come into conflict. A lot of people get to the crossroad and they hesitate, or they set their camp up there at the crossroad. They never really take a step forward. And when you hesitate, that is an invitation for the enemy to come rushing through, and he will if you hesitate. So what God wants us to do is to keep on moving forward, keep on moving higher. There's the chance at that crossroad to draw back, to stay the same, which always results in ineffectiveness. Please don't ever get to the point where you think, I know enough. That's trouble, and you'll find it, and it'll find you. Or there is the opportunity to take the next step and to see what happens. There's always the better option when contrasted to drawing back. The better option is moving forward and seeing what you can do. The moment a person definitely commits to a course of action, you might say that providence moves too. Have you ever thought about how providence and the individual work together, or maybe even conflict? You know, this is getting a little bit into the theological end of things, but it's worth it for us to at least spend just a moment here. But providence and sovereignty of God, again, is a very interesting topic in how it comes into play in our lives. Institutionally, the providence or sovereignty of God cannot and must not be denied. It's real. The plan of salvation cannot be altered. That's in God's providence. That's His sovereignty. That's the institutional aspect. So that cannot be altered. The plan of salvation, the institutions of things such as grace, justification, holiness, many others, those are set and cannot be changed because they relate to the person of God. They relate to who God is, and it will not change, and that's a good thing. Then there is the individual consideration and how the individual relates to providence. You think of providence, you think of God's will, unalterable, something that cannot be changed. Again, how you relate God's providence and sovereignty and individual will probably determine where you go to church. This is where it might get a little bit delicate to understand, because another aspect of God's sovereignty or providence is also very unalterable. Choice. That's an unalterable providence or sovereignty that God has, and He gives each one of us a choice. And like the plan of salvation or holiness or justification, and we can go on down the list, the providence of choice will not change. There was nothing compelling about what was taking place between Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz. In other words, they weren't being forced to do something. Though God had a plan that would be fully revealed later, each of them made several choices, didn't they? That determined what their place in that plan would be, just like you and I and the choices that we made. Would you say that at that juncture where Ruth made a choice choice to go with Naomi and say what she said back in chapter 2, or chapter 1 rather, in verse 16 and 17? Would you say that that was preordained or predestined? You don't have to answer it. That's kind of a tricky question. Was that predestined for Ruth to do that? Did God, back in the halls of eternity, predestine her to say that, and so she really didn't have any choice about it?
No.
Or did she have a choice?
Yeah.
Yeah, she had a choice. Because she had gone back to Moab. She did. Her sister-in-law did, didn't she? So that may have been part of God's plan. And see, this is where we get into where does his sovereignty and your individual choice come into play, and how do they interact with each other? God's plan is going forward, no matter what. So all that is to be determined is what role we will play in it. That he leaves to us. And though I am sure there are some advocates of John Calvin and Calvinism that would like to debate that subject, and I would be more than willing to do so with them. That would be an easy debate. The reality for Ruth and for us is that a whole stream of events issues from our decisions. Every decision that you make, there's an exponential number of issues that start to come to play, and events that come into play. And whatever you decide is going to have impact on me to one extent or another. Whatever I decide is going to have impact on you. There's no getting around that. So our choices do have impact on each other. The reality for us is to understand that. There is all manner of unforeseen incidents and resulting provisions based on the choices that we make. God's plan is set. So again, what's to be determined is where you and I will be in that plan. And we make that choice. Ruth has presented herself to Boaz, but there was nothing inappropriate about it. This is verses 6 and 8. So she's presented herself as her mother-in-law told her to do. There isn't any doubt that Naomi has, over the course of time, trained Ruth well in the ways of God's people. So there is some custom that is coming into play here with what Ruth is doing. As indicated, Ruth startles the sleeping Boaz, as it says in verse 8, that he was actually afraid, woke up. You know, who wouldn't be in a situation like that? You wake up in the middle of the night and somebody's laying at your feet. Would that bother you? It wasn't supposed to be there? That's like, okay. He said, well, my husband does it all the time, right? All right. When he realizes who she is, and we read it in verse 9, she makes what seems to be an unusual request of him. She asks him to spread his skirt or part of his garment over her. Now, in our culture, that setting, with a woman laying at the feet of a man and asking the man to cover her with his own garment, might seem a little bit suggestive. But in this setting, it wasn't. There was no sexual innuendo in what was done. It was a request for protection from someone qualified and someone inclined to give it. And that's what it meant in that particular culture. Ruth was asking for Boaz's protection. That type of arrangement is stated in Ezekiel 16:8, when God is basically speaking to his people, speaking of Jerusalem, and he offered to remedy the people's vulnerability and enter into a covenant of protection with them. And so the wording is the same as it's given in Ruth. He says, I'll offer you this protection. It's a covenant of protection. Boaz acknowledges the purity of Ruth's request. And, you know, I'm glad that that is put in there, you know, in verse 10, when he's acknowledging this, also in verse 11. He states that her request proves her godly intentions.
Is it also in one of the Gospels, Jesus said, he says it to Jerusalem, how I wish to gather you as a mother hen.
Right. Like a mother hen covering her chicks, yeah.
So
It's true.
he's basically saying, I wish I could have done your own choices.
I think it's a similar illustration. I think that she is presenting herself as representing of course, she was a kinsman by in-law, if you will. But, like I say, Boaz acknowledges all of that. He also states that, thank you, but the most important matters are not settled by material gain. And he acknowledges this. He says, your motives are clear because you haven't followed after the young men who are rich or poor. So he says that's not your motive, but by what is taking place in the heart. Reputation is important, isn't it? Do you think it is? Or do you think that it is that important that you have a good reputation in the eyes of the people around you? At the workplace, you think about it, they're a bunch of unbelievers, what do they know? Can you still have a good reputation in their eyes? Absolutely. You think you ought to strive for that? Yes. You ought to think, how about in our own venue here, you want to have a good reputation? What kind of reputation would you like to have with people that are sitting around you right now? That you're loving? That you're accepting? That you are welcoming? That you're solid? That you know what you're talking about? You're serious about your walk with the Lord? You want all those things, right? That's part of your reputation. You might reasonably say that, again, that many people are unbelievers, and it doesn't really matter what they think, because they're living by the wrong standards anyway. Ask yourself what type of reputation you would like to have, how you would like to be seen, and never take that out of the context of a man or a woman of God. So what type of reputation would you like as a man or a woman of God for how others would see you? You might think of words like, I'd like to be considered reliable. I'd like to be considered somebody that's strong. I'd like to be considered somebody that's confident, or have people see me as somebody that is good in a crisis. That's a pretty good one, right? Good in a crisis. I'd like to have people see me as being capable, self-sacrificing. You can just keep on going, right? That's how you would want, and all of those things are possible with the empowerment of the Holy Spirit and the example of Christ. It's important to treat your reputation, or the one that you're working on, with an offensive first strike mentality. What I mean by that is be the cause of it, not the effect. In other words, take the initiative on it, and don't let other things, outside things, determine what your reputation is going to be. Don't let chance dictate what your reputation will be. Well, hope I have a good day, and hope I'm in the right place at the right time. That's not really hope. That's, wish upon a lucky star type of thinking, right? Make it happen. If your reputation isn't everything that you want it to be, work on it, right? How many of you, probably everybody, have seen the television show MASH? You remember Colonel Flagg on there? Remember Colonel Flagg, just a manic, you can see he's just a manic intelligence officer, and so he's there with Colonel Blake, who's kind of wimpy, in the show, and so Blake is looking at over the shoulder at Flagg's notes that he has on all of the people in the camp, and so he sees a yellow mark by his own name, and he goes, yellow? And Flagg goes, work on it, right? And that's what you got to do if you want to have the right reputation. You got to have the desire to work on it. Right? How many of you want to be seen as somebody that knows the Bible? Oh, I hope all of you say, well, yeah, I do. You got to work on that. It takes work, doesn't it? You want to be somebody that's seen as somebody that's intelligent? Well, just act intelligent every once in a while, right? Just every once in a while. It doesn't have to be all the time. There are moments when nobody's going to be looking, then you can act all goofy if you want to, right? But you know what I'm saying. I think that resilience might be another word that you would describe as part of a desirable reputation. We talked about at the beginning of the lesson, resilience would be the ability to bounce back from a mistake or a failure or defeat. So you're resilient. It might mean it may come into play where somebody like Ruth is involved. Ruth had come through some pretty difficult times, but as Boaz notes, She has, in the eyes of the community, established a reputation of resilience and virtue. A few other things that I'll mention. The word virtuous, as it's used in verse 11, refers to somebody that is a person of valor. It refers to somebody that is valiant, that is strong, that is capable. All of those things are contained within that word. And so Boaz says, this community has seen you as being that type of person, a virtuous person, containing all of the attributes that makes for a well-rounded person. As you know, I do a lot of reading, but there are some books that I probably wouldn't recommend to everybody to read. Because you have to read some books, you need to make sure that you're well-grounded in God's Word so that you can filter all the trash. There may be some, if you were to ever read writings by Aristotle or Socrates or Plato, you'd be going back and forth between, this guy's insane, and, wow, that's pretty insightful. So what you do is you measure everything that you read by God's Word so you can sort all the trash and get all of that distortion out and pick up on what you need to. All truth. Did Aristotle ever say anything that was true? Mm-hmm. He did. But the problem is that this isn't a problem, but all truth is based on God's Word, but the problem is that it's been mixed in with other things that are not based on God's Word, and so it becomes distorted. So if you're somebody that says, well, I'm going to use God's Word as a litmus test, then you can read these different ideas. And in one sense, you almost become a little bit more well-rounded. I don't believe I've ever read any author that I completely agree with everything that they said. I like John Locke, you've heard me quote him many times, Francis Schaeffer, William James, some individuals that I really enjoy reading, but I don't agree with everything they say. And a lot of it is because it's not necessarily checked against God's Word. There's some different authors that really don't go the way of God's Word, but sometimes I'll read that just to see what somebody else is thinking about a particular topic and think, wow, that is really off. So again, these are types of things that you want as a reputation. Somebody who's well-rounded, somebody that has a good perspective. That type of reputation isn't established overnight. Yours isn't, mine isn't. That's not the microwave type of reputation. You can just put it in the microwave for a minute or two and it comes out and it's all done. That's not going to work that way. At the foundation of a solid reputation, no matter what the attributes are, is consistency. That's what makes for a good reputation. You're consistent. Now, if somebody is consistent, what does it mean? Okay, you're going to change your life and you're going to start doing the right thing according to God's Word, and you do it for 2 weeks, and it's like, is that enough? And then let's say you do it for 2 weeks, and then you slip up for an hour. You pretty much just shot the other 2 weeks. It's easy, and Ecclesiastes talks about this, it's easy to build up a reputation, and all it takes is just a moment lapse, and all of it is shot to pieces. You wouldn't want a reputation as someone that was reliable sometimes. Would you? Well, they're very reliable sometimes. Or someone that was capable every now and then. You would want a reputation like that. Can you be holy most of the time? Well, they're holy most of the time. You know what you're going to be listening for? Okay, what about the most of the time? What's that about? You're going to forget it. Even if somebody said, well, 90% of the time they're holy. And you're going to zero in, what about that 10%? Because you know that 10% kind of wipes out the other 90%. You can't be 90% holy. Boaz knows why Ruth is there and why Naomi has sent her. Verse 12, they needed his help, and under the law, he was to help them if he could. He did have the resources, and if he was willing, and if he was related. Did he have the resources?
Yes.
Was he willing?
Yes.
But there was a problem. He wasn't the nearest kinsman, and he says so. Basically saying, I'd love to help you, but in this regard, I'm not the near kinsman. We'll deal with that later, that's in chapter 4, but it's very clear that Boaz wanted to help them, but he also knew that there was someone else that had the first call on being a near kinsman to Naomi and resultingly for Ruth. And that had to be dealt with, first of all. You can never do the right thing by skirting around associated issues. It's kind of like saying 90% holy. Another way of putting it would be that God will never call you to one thing if it requires that you violate something of your ethics and morals in some other regard. So he's not going to call you to one thing if it means you're going to have to violate some aspect of the truth, your walk, God's word with him. He'll never call you to that. Our inclination to compromise, that which is important, is at the very least going to limit how effective you can be as a follower of Christ. Compromise limits your effectiveness in Christ. And you know, most of us would say, well, I'm not going to compromise God's word, I'm not going to compromise my walk, but sometimes when doubts come in, if we harbor that and we let that take root, there's some compromises going on. We're compromising our trust in God. We've all experienced that, and hopefully those roots don't grow too deeply. Have you ever thought to yourself, that person isn't following the same Jesus I am? You ever thought that about somebody, or maybe not exactly those words, but wow, okay. They say they have a relationship with Jesus Christ, but there's a lot of problems in what they're claiming. You might know some people that claim to have such a relationship, but their idea of what that means and yours sometimes seems to have very little in the way of common ground. Well, why is that? Is it because your opinion is greater than theirs? Well, the thing that you go to is, and the way that you keep it from being you against somebody else and them against you, is by going to the Word. That's the litmus test. That's the only place that you go. That's the only place that you can go. Your idea of what is acceptable to God is very different from some people. And some people that call themselves Christians. What God requires of them seems extremely diverse from what you believe at times. There are a lot of people that are walking out there that may be in a relationship with Christ, but because they don't believe in the gifts of the Spirit and the baptism of the Holy Spirit, they are very limited in their empowerment. They're very limited in their understanding of God's Word. They're very limited in their effectiveness in the kingdom of God. It's not that I would go so far as to say that such individuals aren't saved. But what I would say is that they're going to have trouble staying saved. They're going to be more inclined to backslide, right? And Peter wrote about this, that you can do that. You can backslide. And in one sense, for somebody that, Hebrews chapter 6 also talks about it, but in one sense, a person that backslides is worse off than they were before they even believed at the very beginning, according to what Peter wrote. Mm-hmm. So there's some people out there that have some different types of ideas. What God requires of some people just doesn't seem to equate to what you feel that he requires of you according to the Word. All of that can be confusing if we aren't careful. It is confusing, isn't it, sometimes, when you're around other believers and they're not really in tune with the Holy Spirit, they're not really in tune with God's Word, they really don't see those as relevant factors. But Brother Randy mentioned that during Sunday morning study, that some people have a problem with that big bad word, doctrine. Right? They want to stay away from doctrine. Translation, they want to stay away from God's Word, because all of God's Word is doctrine. Every jot and tittle of it. And all of it is important. I had a lady come to me one time and said, why can't God heal my husband? But I have seen him do so with others. That's a heartfelt question, isn't it? I could understand that I didn't really answer that question because it wouldn't have gone anywhere, I didn't feel at the time. What we did talk about was what it meant to be healed. To be healed. And I gently asked her if she had a proper understanding of what that meant. And I don't think that she did. I tried to talk to her about it. I don't know if it took root. I could have said all the cliche types of things to her. Oh, just have faith. Sometimes that's appropriate, but Sometimes I think in those critical moments, people are looking for something a little more meaty than that. And I could have said those types of things. I could have said, well, just pray harder. I could have just said, well, claim healing for him. Assert that he is healed instead of asserting that he needs to be healed. So you get the idea. There's nothing wrong with praying for healing. But there's some people in the Christian community at large, if you will, that feel that it's inappropriate for you to acknowledge any illness in your life, because then you harbor it. So if you, I know 2 or 3 of you had the flu or the cold or the sniffles or whatever here, under that line of thinking, because you had that because you said, I have the flu. So you claimed having the flu. Do you really think that God is so goofy and so trivial that he would say, okay, you said it, so now you got it? You know, if you're going to claim something, say something like, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to keep on doing what I can do. Sometimes, what is the body telling you?
Rest.
You got to have some rest, right? Sometimes the body says you got to have some rest. You know, I found for me, and maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. Everybody's different. But the thing that works for me, unless I'm really, really sick, if I'm really sick, then I just sleep a lot, and that usually helps me, and I'm usually better pretty quickly. But one of the things that I have found that works for me is I get up and keep on moving. I keep on doing, and I keep on, and it's like you work that out. That works for some, maybe not for everybody. But again, there's people have a lot of different ideas, and one of those is about healing. You know, if I'd have told her any of those other things, well, just pray harder. You know, just have faith. You know, you got to believe. That would not have been honorable for me to mislead her in that way. If you'll just believe. You pray harder. If you'll just claim it until you finally get it, you'll get it. That would have been dishonorable for me to tell that individual that. And I don't tell people that. What I tell them is, I know God can heal you. And I ask, do you believe that? That God can heal you right now? Whatever the case is, whether it's a flu or something else, do you believe that God can heal you? Well, if they answer yes, well, that's a big breakthrough. But do you trust God's timing? Do you trust that He's enacting a plan in your life? You know, you can't help but, I think it was mentioned in your class, you can't help but think of Job. I mean, couldn't he have just claimed all those sores and boils away? Couldn't he have? Or did God have a plan that he wasn't fully aware of until later? And so, again, we have to understand that God does have a plan. He does have something that He's enacting in our lives. Boaz was not going to mislead Ruth. So he says, I'm not your nearest kinsman. He treats her with the utmost courtesy and consideration and demonstrates that he is concerned for her safety and her well-being. And that's expressed a little bit later on. He realizes that if this situation is going to turn out well for everyone, he will have to do things right so that there can be no thought or suggestion of wrongdoing. A little bit later on, he tells her, stay here, and then go during the time of day when there are very few people around, so that they don't misunderstand why you're here. So he's protecting her reputation. Some people think that honor relates to not allowing an insult to go unchallenged. How many of you have read or seen the story of the Three Musketeers? Okay, happened in the 1600s, and the story is full of slights to honor. Slights to honor. One character considered every smile, somebody smiling at him like, oh yeah, kind of one of those kind of smiles, considered every smile an insult. And even a look as provocation. Has anybody been looking at you provocatively lately? Probably. So it was said of this individual, his hand was on the pommel of his sword 10 times a day. It's like, you said what? Ready to go at it. Historian Kenneth Greenberg describes pre-Civil War tendencies to enter into a duel over trifling issues such as failure to show proper respect. One saying went, when a man of honor is told that he smells, he does not draw a bath, he draws a pistol. Right? Both Boaz and Ruth offer a better illustration of acting in an honorable way. A part of that should be to make it better for and protect those that cannot do so on their own without any thought of recompense. And Boaz does it. As far as materially, what did Ruth have to offer Boaz? Nothing. And that's not what he was looking for. He was looking to protect her and Naomi, to do the best he could by them and to do the right thing. I was to be the guest speaker at a church. This was a few years ago. I knew the people fairly well, but I'd never really spoken at that church before. I'd been there for a couple of services just to see what it was like. When I arrived, I was taken to a room just off of the pulpit area so that I could kind of relax and gather my thoughts. Sometimes I'll do that at the first part of the song service here. If I'm over here in the fellowship hall, I'm kind of clearing my mind and getting ready for bringing the message. And so it was kind of an opportunity for that. And so they offered me water, and then one man came in and he offered to shine my shoes while I waited. That shocked me. Now they were showing respect and honor, and it was impressive. We were treated in a very similar fashion when we were at River of Life Church in Church of God in Mountain Home, Idaho last October. I was there conducted a 3-day conference, and they just treated us so well. Just threw out the red carpet for us. And I guess the thing with me is like, you don't have to do all that. I'm just glad to be here. But they went out of their way for us. Every time we go there, it's funny, every time we go there, they have they set up the room for us. They know what hotel I tend to stay in, and the room, and they put a nice big basket of fruit, candy bars, and what else? Water bottles, bottles of water, what else? It's a whole bunch of different items. And they just do it up nice, and that's very impressive. And I told the pastor that. It wasn't a matter of worthiness, because Boaz wasn't under any particular obligation to Ruth, as he wasn't the nearest kinsman, or to Naomi, but it was the right thing to do. Have you ever done that with somebody? You refuse to gossip about somebody, you're protecting their reputation. Have you ever, I've done that a couple of times. I'll say, wait a minute, the person that you brought up to me is right over here. So why don't we go ahead and bring them in and now say what you're going to say. It's amazing how many times that just kind of defuses whatever is being brought up. It's like, well, never mind, so. But that's what we're supposed to. Do you feel obligated to do that for each person that's sitting around you right now? To protect their reputation? They've got to be a part of it too, right? You understand what I'm saying, but you protect their reputation as much as anything else. Are you willing to, I guess you would say verbally, I was going to say defend, but I'll put it a different way, verbally advocate for another person that may be talked about unjustly or unkindly, or by someone that doesn't have any knowledge of what's really going on? It's not pleasant, is it, when somebody is saying something about you and that starts to go on the rumor mill, and it always does, doesn't it, unless it's stopped. And then all of a sudden, there's a shadow that's cast on that individual that's probably completely wrong and always unjustified. It is how we would like to be treated, how Boaz was treating Ruth, and how we should treat others as the opportunity presents itself. Have you ever been treated dishonorably by someone? They treated you wrong. They thought wrong about you. They said something wrong about you. And you might say, yeah, many times. Hopefully you can't, but if it's happened once, you know what pain is. And that can come from, or in the form of presumption. It can come in the form of a lack of recognition, disrespect, or subterfuge with hidden agendas. I can think of 3 to 5 people I come into contact with on a regular basis that go out of their way to disrespect me every time they're around me. Isn't that amazing? But they don't know me. And they don't know how I might react. Right? They're presuming on how I might react. But that's not easy to deal with. You know, usually what I wind up doing is, Lord, help me with my pride. Help me not to react the way I tell people this in class, reaction usually relates to emotion. Response usually relates to thinking. Emotion, thinking, good things, but sometimes if they're separated from each other, that's where trouble starts, especially if it's just an emotional reaction. And that's what I usually pray, Lord, help me, so I don't take offense to this. Isn't that what it really is? You know, when we talk about 1 Corinthians 13, we're talking about love. Love isn't provocative easily. You don't provoke somebody. You don't try to do that to somebody, but it also means you're not easily provoked. And that's a pretty good passage in there to read every once in a while when you feel like you've been disrespected or something. It doesn't excuse what the other person did out of a lack of consideration. But what you have to do is say, okay, Lord, I'm learning from this. This drew me to the Scriptures. Whatever has to be done with them, for them, that's up to you. You think it'd be appropriate to tell somebody sometime, you know, what you just said was really disrespectful. Think that'd be appropriate? I think it would be. You know, you say it, that was disrespectful, but I forgive you, bye. But ultimately, that's what you're going to have to do, right?
Why don't you just kind of have your coconut slide around the back?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but just, now what? Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
What'd you say?
yeah, right. Well, you know, it's, when we talk about Boaz and Ruth, it's a beautiful story, and I think that in relation to God and the church, this is what's also being talked about here with Boaz and Ruth, exemplary of God and the church. He will always honor us with the truth. He'll never violate our ability to make a choice, but he will always honor us with the truth. And that is exactly what Boaz was doing regarding Ruth. Yes, I want to help you, but there's another situation that's got to be dealt with. He would guard her own honor and protect her. We can know that it is simply an illustration of how Christ is with us. He truly is our kinsman redeemer. You know, when you think about who's advocating before the throne of God for us right now?
Jesus.
Christ is. He's interceding for us. And I think part of that might be our reputation. I think he wants to protect our reputation, but we have to participate in that. Here's the other part of it that may be a little more iffy. Do we need to protect his reputation? In the eyes of the world, you better believe it. And how do we do that? By making sure that there's no misunderstanding about the way we're living, what it means to be a believer in Jesus Christ. We honor him that way. Amen? Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for all you do for us. Lord, help us in these different areas that we've talked about. Help us to protect each other, to be there for each other, to honor each other, and to say, I want to do what I can to make things better for you. That's, you know, if we were doing that for each other, it would be just great. It would be exactly what you want. And we need to be concerned about our reputation in an unbelieving world. We need to show them through our reputation based on your character what it means to lead a transformed life. So that there can be no misunderstanding about what it means to be a believer in Jesus Christ. Lord, help us to put the word fidelity into our vocabulary, because that fidelity and reputation has got to be there. It's not the 90% holiness. That's a contradiction in terms. So Lord, help us to understand this, help us to apply it in our lives. May you be honored, may you be glorified. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit we pray. Amen.